Hello, this is Jer, and in the last episode, I had an explosion of carbon dioxide in my base because this tiny little zone that had an immense pressurized carbon dioxide that I drilled into, not knowingly that it was filled with that much carbon dioxide. Just did not imagine that possible, so I didn't even bother to check. But there it is. Carbon dioxide is all over my base. Wishing I had known about this, as I mentioned last episode, because I could have used this for carbon dioxide engines. I'm currently no longer using carbon dioxide for a form of space travel, entirely on Radbolt engines for space travel. This one carbon skimmer is eating, 300 grams a second? That's just not going to be enough. Let's double the speed of that. Salt water or brine line going to the output. Let's remove that. Just going to provide this skimmer with water. Output for polluted water to go through the sleeve, and that should already have water in the location that's been built. And hopefully that's going to help the process of removing the mass amount of carbon dioxide, which I was not expecting to have. So that'll feed into that sieve there to turn the polluted water back to water. That'll go into liquid reservoir and feed back inside the carbon skimmer in a loop. Okay, so fortunately the beds or the barracks is not affected. Dining hall is not the best, but I'll just do my best. Instead of trying to temporarily relocate that, I'm just going to do my best to get as much skimmers in as possible. I'm going to probably create at least two more to have four of them running. And in addition to a pump at the bottom of my base, which is also removing carbon dioxide and leaking that out in space since it's no longer needed. This is a mess. An absolute mess. I would not have done this way if I did not realize how pressurized that area is. But anyway, it did not take long for things to go wrong inside the nuclear power plant that I built. So it's a research reactor with tons of steam turbines. I believe I've got enough steam turbines in existence. Problem is they're too effective at taking the hot steam out and dumping them on top of the research reactor. And that's resulting in the fact that the aqua tuners are not exposed to enough steam. And the atmosphere there is just too thin, so they're just adding temperature to the machinery itself and not allowing it to go anywheres. And therefore, it's breaking because it's going well above the temperature that can handle. So my plan is to start dumping water on top of the steam turbines instead of just the research reactor. The research reactor gets all the attention at the moment. So that goes, and that has 5 different liquid vents from the various different steam turbines. So that the one on the right isn't broken, but it's going to if I don't find a solution to this. All right, let me think about this, and we'll get back to it. That's not the only problem I have with this whole setup. The other problem is Radbolts are making it into the way of the faces of dupes, causing them some damage. So that's not ideal. I'm going to disable the Radbolt generators here. I'm going to do that one by one, or copy the settings. But anyway, that's going to disable them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this pathway over here. What if the dupes go to the left and hop onto this platform with the interplanetary launcher? As you can see, just as that Radbolt span across, I smack them in the face. And they're doing that to get to the various Radbolt engines or the safe air modules inside them. So what I'm doing is preventing them from going in by building a wall, so they can no longer access the interplanetary launcher to get to the Radbolt engines and the rockets themselves. And the other thing that is doing is there's a location right here where dupes are getting smacked. Now, unfortunately, I can't block that off, because if I were to block that off, they can't get to the farm, which which I definitely want them to be able to get to, amongst other things, as well as the rockets. So they have to be able to cross this point, but Radbolts also have to get through. Well, there's a solution to this. And you can think of it like train railroad type situation where the dupes are the trains, so not the Radbolts. And I've got the sensor here that detects when a train goes by, or the dupes that is. And if the dupes are there, I've got a Radbolt reflector that will be activated, meaning it's going to hold it at that point in an infinite loop. So Radbolts will go and be held in an infinite loop in that reflector while it's true. And then when the dupes go by, they're gone, then the Radbolts can fire through it because that becomes disabled. If a Radbolt gets to this zone and there are no dupes there, then it will that Radbolt reflector will be disabled, it will pass through it, and it'll go safely into the base. So hopefully these two changes will prevent some of my dupes from getting sick. And just to point out, I did go back, I did have a dupe die because they got hit by too many Radbolts. I had rewind by one cycle, and now that I've disabled the Radbolt generator, I'm going to put in this two changes. I'm expecting that will prevent this situation from dupes being smacked in the face by Radbolt. So these are OR gates. Basically, I'm going to have them all around these everywheres. Three of them that are going to join to the input of this reflector. And basically, it's just one OR amongst the whole thing. If one of those sensors detects a dupe, it's going to say, activate that reflector, meaning it'll hold it there in an infinite loop. Well, infinite, and so as far time that the dupes go away and all sensors come back as false. In which case, then and only then can Radbolt go through there. So easy solution above, just make a wall so that the dupes can't cross it. And they can still technically get on the platform of the interplanetary launcher, but they really don't have a reason to go there. So I'm not actually that concerned about the small area on the interplanetary launcher where they could be smacked in the head. But the other thing is the rockets themselves. Now when they go into that, they go from above, so that they're going down and bypassing the whole area where Radbolts fly through. So they're not going by the engine. They're approaching it from above. Anyway, we'll see that later on. I'm just realizing that this middle reflector sensor is actually unnecessary because of the coverage of the other two. So I'm just getting rid of this logic here and just have a simple sensor on the left. I'm going to monitor this. I suspect this is Radbolts go faster than the dupes, so I suspect that this will be enough of a distance. If it's not, if I'm finding the dupes take damage, you may see that I put another sensor to the left or perhaps further above if that situation occurs. But I think we're going to be fine with this setup here. And that's just going to allow the Radbolts to avoid the crossing paths of the dupes when and only when the dupes are there. I think we can turn this back on and have everything run safely. So I'm going to put 3 on, and that's going to, because it's an intense amount of radiation, I'm going to get a lot of that. Still have this problem here. I'm going to now allow my dupes to go into this zone, and they'll only go into that zone with their protective suits. So I need to actually disable this because I don't want to go in an infinite loop of enriched uranium going back and forth. What I'm going to do is this is the solution. So really the only problem I have is there's not enough initial steam, water inside this research reactor area. If there was, there'd be more steam than the steam turbines can handle, which is good up to a certain point. I don't want it to just get the maximum amount of pressure. But because I've got liquid press there, or sorry, liquid vent, I'm going to pair that with a sensor, an Atmos sensor. It's got to be made of steel. And it's just going to connect to down here. I don't want to put it over the actual liquid vent because I don't want water to be sitting in pipes where it could bust. So I'll create a liquid shut off below. That's going to stop water going into it when and only when I get a certain temperature or a certain pressure. And that thing can only do 20 kilograms. So that'll be the amount then I'll be happy with. The idea is if it goes below 20 kilograms, start throwing some more water in it from the actual system itself, such that we'll be comfortable with the aquatuners having enough steam. There'll be enough steam for the steam turbines to take the steam out of the air or out of this chamber and send it back into water that goes on top of the research reactor. But in addition to that, there'll be also enough steam, which there isn't at the moment, for the aquatuner. So that repairs are going to be made to both aquatuners, so they'll function again. And the right one is also taking damage. Earlier it was just the left one. But anyway, the same logic here on this side. It's going to measure 20 kilograms of pressure. If it's below that, we're just going to throw more water into that line over here until it meets that condition. And I suspect, based on testing that I've done before, this will be a one-time load, as in I won't permanently need. I could just leave this set up here. I don't think it's going to hurt. But I suspect it's a one-time load. I'll find out if that's true in time. I may just leave that here just for safety purposes. Because certainly if I get 20 kilograms of pressure of steam, those steam turbines should, I suspect, will be fine. All right, so that's going to need power, automation wire in it, and then they'll start to get more water that turns the steam inside there. Okay, so now that I've got the ammo sensors created, I'm going to max it out. That's 200,000 grams. Now, if that were able to go higher, I would probably make it higher. If I had my choice, I would probably put 50,000. But 20,000 I'll be comfortable with. The other thing that I could easily do is I could have a manual button to turn on and off and keep dumping water until I manually detect it. Was around 50 or so. The thing I don't like about that is I could very well forget about it and it could go too high. There is such a thing of having too much pressure inside there. We can see now that this is the most amount of steam I've ever had around those aquatuners, so that's good. But if you go above 200 kilograms, I believe it is, the actual research reactor will no longer be able to sweat out water, and you could be in meltdown situation. So still have an overheat situation happening here. I suspect that's just because we don't have enough water being dumped in at some point. Yeah, you can see steam is not even 1 kilogram. So that we'll wait for that to go up. Hopefully not too much steam or steel is going to be burnt in this process. Unfortunately, we'll lose a little bit. I might disable the actual repairs of those until it's complete. But over this side, we're 6 kilograms. The actual machine is 160, so that one is fine. We can do repairs on that one, and I'm fine with that because I suspect the left one is now going to be happy. I started loading water on the left side first. So once we're over here, 300 and some, but it looks like it's going down pretty quickly, actually. So even though it's not a happy temperature at the moment, it will get to the point where it'll be happy and maintain itself. All right, so just waiting for the next cycle to load. That is now under 300 degrees and decreasing. The temperature is getting higher, and that will continue to go to about 20,000 grams of steam, which is an amount I'm comfortable with. As I mentioned, I would probably aim for 50 if I wanted to bother watching it rise to that point. I'm just scared of it going out of control and getting above the 200 mark. So 4 Radbolt engines fired up. This situation over here seems to be built and running fine. The idea is that's just going to stop Radbolts from going through. Wall dupes are there. The rest of the area, we should have a good amount of protection. Since research is back, let's do high velocity destruction, so I can do some mining in the future. I can see this episode is all about fixing bad things. The other bad thing is we started off with was the carbon dioxide bomb that went off yesterday, or rather the last episode. and just create an excessive amount of carbon dioxide throughout my base. Fortunately, it was cool carbon dioxide. It wasn't something like that brought heat with it. It actually kind of probably had a cooling effect. Not that I needed that, because this base is actually pretty dang cool as it is in terms of temperature. That is. So what I need to do is just get rid of this carbon dioxide. I don't really have a purpose for it. I'm just going to create carbon skimmers to be able to get rid of it. Got 2 of them running at the moment, but they can't reach that water sieve to refill it. So that's not going to do anything unless I get ladders that they can actually reach that. So now my dupes are able to reach the water sieve. They've put it in more filtration medium, so the carbon skimmers are operating again, which is absolutely essential for the amount of excessive carbon dioxide that these dupes are being exposed to. What I want to do now, just digging or temporarily removing one of the dirt piles. You can turn polluted dirt to regular dirt, but I'm going to put that back eventually, and what I'm going to do is just temporarily put a carbon skimmer here, just while there's an excessive amount of carbon dioxide. I'm just going to void this saltwater line, or brine line rather, and have that meet polluted water over there. Actually, does that have power? And it does not. Okay, so let's bring over power, and that's just going to help the system. I'm going to build another skimmer. You can see I'm building or removing this old ranch, and that's where I'll put another skimmer, at least one more anyways. An absolute mess this has been, this whole thing, but it's not the end of the world. You know, if it was excessively bad, I might think to just reload from a previous save. Not necessary. A bunch of carbon skimmers are going to fix this problem. That's my hope. That's my intention. I'm pretty sure that'll be the case. So this needs to be powered up, and then that will start eating the carbon dioxide, turning water to polluted water, going to water sieve, and then eventually getting to the point where the carbon dioxide will be gone. I would suspect that once this is all done, the carbon dioxide is removed, that is, I'll be able to go back down just to a single carbon dioxide skimmer and not rely on so many. That is just there because of that one little pocket of carbon dioxide that I had no idea was that warm. Just going to populate some of the staples with pips. And then just clean out some of the water that's down here so that those carbon skimmers can fully access the carbon dioxide that's around them. And then just wait to see how long it's going to take this carbon dioxide to get out of my base. I've decided to add yet another carbon dioxide skimmer. I can see it is making a progress. I see pockets of oxygen down in this southerly part of my base. But let's just speed the process just a tiny bit by adding one more. We're eventually going to get to a point where limiting factor will be the amount of polluted water that the water sieve can handle. But I'm hopeful that this last carbon skimmer will be enough to be able to handle this situation, because this is going to be a one-time thing, as in I'll eventually be able to go back to the one carbon skimmer. But until then, I will have 5 of them running, plus the pump at the bottom, which is removing some other materials. Now, those carbon skimmers are only removing carbon dioxide. Noticing that I've got a lot of water spill over here, actually. And I suspect the reason for that is it's just pumping in brine that's too cold, because it's not mixing with brine that's of normal temperature or above 0. So I suspect 0-degree brine is going into that machinery and breaking. So I've had to sweep that several times, and I'll have to fix that. Okay, so now what I'm doing is looking for more salt water, because I'm short in water. You can see here this that desalinator. I've got a second desalinator there that doesn't have access to salt water. The one on the bottom left I've now disabled because it's actually too cold and there's not enough brine there anyways. But I've got a lot of salt water in random pockets, such as you can see here. So I already have a pump in there. It's just a matter of getting the piping in there to be able to send that that liquid, that salt water, into the desalinator, so that I can have access to water, which is used for the washrooms, it's used for oxygen, so it's very essential. And now that I'm removing this excess carbon dioxide, I certainly need to replace it with a lot of oxygen once I can get in there. All right, water, why not? We are definitely short in water, though I want water inside pipes, not just bottled water. But that salt water should do for a time until that runs out, in which case I'm hoping to have an alternate source of water. We can see that now, salt water starting to go into the desalinator. That should, yeah, there it is. Water is going out. That should be supplied into the washrooms, which is dry. The showers also dry, and the electrolyzers to pump out more oxygen into my base. And still a lot of carbon dioxide, including the eating area, the mess hall, mop-up area. That mesh tile left to the kitchen is saving the fact that it's not leaking into my food storage area. So that tiny mesh tile is helped out there. So if my dupes get sick in the mess hall or a grate hall, that won't break that area. The other thing is I have, this is pretty much just a episode fixing problems, it looks like. So another pocket of liquid here. This time it's actually just pure water, so I won't have to run this through a desalinator. But I'm realizing where most of my water went. It's to the inverted world, where I was dumping a lot of liquid on various different tiles to create future ice. So here's the 2 water sieves I've got at this point. Just adding the polluted water lines going in. This is going to need some power. Dupes will need physical access to this to remove the polluted dirt, as well as add sand or filtration medium. And then the idea is I'll be able to get water from this. I'm going to send that water line to converge to the input, same input line that's being provided in by the desalinator. So we got all water joining into one location. I've had it go on the left and then go back towards the base. It goes through the washroom. In the future, I'll probably want to refactor this because I'm no longer being dependent on the inverted world for my water. In fact, this world is actually providing water to the inverted world. But that can happen later. Let's just add this water line to go into this line here that goes into the washroom area and then the rest of the base. So that should take care of my water needs for a good amount of time, and actually has both a polluted water geyser or slush geyser and the temporary salt water for this. Okay, everything is set up for the system to go online. They just need to add some filtration medium, and then I start to see some water go out of it, and that is going to converge with the water that comes out of the desalinator, and that's going to make a full amount of water, 2 different sources for input for the time being. With that out of the way and the carbon skimmers running in the main base to remove carbon dioxide, I'm starting to work on the actual rockets themselves. This is the inside of the Radbolt engines. They're all going to be identical, or at least very similar to this. They'll have a carbon skimmer, they'll have an oxidizer, food storage, they'll have 2 rooms above, which is one's going to be barracks, one's going to be a mess hall, and then the little area on the right, not technically a room, but that will store a latrine, and then the bottom area will have the carbon skimmer, manual generator, and the food storage, as well as the piloting station. Got gold surrounded here, so whatever dupe is going to be spending time will find it's a high, they'll have a high decor experience, upping their morale while they're up in space. And they'll be able to have access to 2 rooms for morale bonus as well. And if I give pepper bread inside this, that food storage, and that pepper bread is frozen, it'll last forever, but they'll get a high morale bonus from just eating it itself. And as these doors are only for the purpose of dividing some of the rooms, I might as well leave them open so dupes don't have to open and close them while they go inside the rocket. So this is pretty much the same thing that I'll have for the other ones. So yeah, now get the mess table. So oh yeah, the other thing is this is going to be supporting 2 dupes. Okay, so one of the problems I'm having here is I still have a path for dupes to be able to access the rockets via the ladders system, and that goes through a Radbolt across zone. So I want to avoid that. I'm destroying these ladders, so you destroy 2 ladders. The dupes aren't able to jump that high, therefore they can't cross it. So they will no longer be able to get to the rockets, the safe air modules, from the bottom. They'll have to come from the top right, which is excellent because there's no path of the Radbolts. Actually, might as well get rid of the excess ladders, because if they were in theory to stand on top of that ladder, they could still be smacked in the head, which I want to avoid. So the only thing that could happen at this point, oh, I see some material falling on the interplanetary launcher that they're in interest. Okay. All right, there's more changes that is needed here. Okay, let's just get rid of some of these ladders. Hopefully, dupes aren't going to take any damage while they're temporarily doing this stuff. Otherwise, I may need to disable those Radbolt generators. But let's see if we're able to avoid that. That dupe there is stuck only because there's no actual path. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. So this is the path that I want my dupes to use to reach the rocket. They're going to go the long way round just so that they can avoid the path of the Radbolts themselves. And because one of the dupes is stuck there, I'm going to make one at a high priority. And once that ladder is built, we should see that dupe on the far left say, oh, I can finally escape there. They're going to run across all those the platforms and make their way out of it. The other thing I'm going to do now is start the process of exploring other worlds, because that's the part of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is send a rocket into a new world, and we'll do that fairly soon. Have a lot of steam now here, 26 kilograms, which is good, and then 18 on the sides, 17 on that side. That is good. And a little bit of extra water still being provided on that right side. But now we're in a situation where the steam turbine or the aqua tuners are safe. I'm going to dump nuclear waste out here in space. I just want to get rid of it. So that's what I'm doing at this point. So I'll put one there. I'll put one over here. That way, and when I see some nuclear waste taking up this spot here, so I'm going to get them to sweep that up. And hopefully I'll make it a high priority dumping zone, so that just gets put out in space, so I won't have to deal with it anymore. I haven't found a real purpose for nuclear waste. If anyone ever does, I'd be curious to know, but I just throw it out in space when my dupes discover it. I think I'm going to end on this. I am been fixing a lot of things, haven't added necessarily a lot of new things, but I'm going to put windows at this location, so when my dupes are going up the ladder, they'll be able to they'll be exposed to some sunlight, and that might just brighten their day. Not necessarily sure if I've got enough sunlight at this space to get a sunlight effect, but if not, it's not gonna hurt. The other thing is it's going to give them a well-lit bonus while they're using the ladder. I'm not actually sure if that translates to them climbing faster or falling. It would be so funny if it makes them fall down the pole faster. That may not necessarily be the case. There's no actual light. Oh yeah, it's nighttime. That's why. Of course, let's just wait for a daytime. So I'll just test this out to see if they get the well-lit bonus. Again, I'm not actually sure if that makes them travel faster, but if it does, then this is definitely a good thing to do. But I think it's also in other bases, it'll give them a bright, I can't remember, something bright experience. But it doesn't look like there might be enough light for that to happen. But if I hover over one of those, I can see that it's well lit. But anyway, whether or not that actually has a speed effect, I'm not sure. But hey, I always like the idea of putting light down the ladder and the pole, in particular the ladder, just in case it gives them sort of a speed bonus. Everything else is about fixing this episode, so I think that'll do for now. This episode has been largely about fixing problems. So we had the carbon dioxide that is slowly being fixed with the large number of carbon dioxide skimmers that are now in the bottom of the base. So that will slowly shrink the carbon dioxide so my dupes will be able to breathe when they're in the lower section of my base. The other problems that I had is around the nuclear power plant. One is inside the plant itself, which is the fact that there's not enough steam around the aquatuners to be able to take the heat from the aquatuner to the steam. That's solved simply by just adding more water that will turn to steam. And I suspect that'll be a one-time load of that water. We'll see if that's true in the episodes going along. But I think we've fixed the aquatuner problem. The other problem is the Radbolts itself smacking the faces of the actual dupes. So two things to do around that. One is just preventing the dupes from walking in that zone. So that was fixed by building walls, destroying some ladders. Easy. The other bit is actually something that I've never thought to do before, which is having sort of, I guess, what you call a railroad crossing type of thing with a dupe sensors to be able to say, okay, if you see a dupe in the area, they're about to cross this particular zone, tell the Radbolts just to hold on before it crosses via a Radbolt reflector. Anyway, if you want to see some of the other things that I get to, like, subscribe, and see you in the next video.